Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, Last Resort, Season 2, let's watch.
Sophie's got the audacity to write compassion on her rock. Meanwhile, she's lying to my face. I saw the messages, clear as day. Sophie messaging Callum, her ex, don't tell Rob about us having sex. It's lie after lie after lie, and then she deflects and gaslights me and says, oh, well, that all happened when I was younger. No, you lying to me is now.
Yeah, I don't know if I've shown the clips from this conflict, but the content that I'm gleaning from this, I think this might have happened in a previous season. But, and by the way, Stacy pulled me aside just now and said, because she's watched the Rob and Sophie story, and Stacy's like, I feel like you might need to watch their previous seasons. I'm guessing that a lot of people watching that know this couple were probably thinking similar things, if not commenting below. And yeah, I get that. And I understand that it can be frustrating to hear me yammer about things that I don't know anything about. But I try to balance it while not saying anything, right? That I want to say something, and I say it tentatively based on what I think I'm gleaning from context. And I'm always just using it as a jumping off point anyway. I can't say anything about the two of them. But basically what Stacey was telling me was that Rob was being unfairly treated by Sophie and Sophie's mom, apparently. And that the infidelity that Rob is guilty of, he was flirting with people on Instagram and DMs or something like that. And while Stacy is telling me that is infidelity, right? Because it's hurtful and it's not following the commitment that he had with Sophie. But it's not like he was, I wanted to say gallivanting. I don't know why. But anyway, so for Rob, he is saying, and he has been saying this episode, that it's not that. So the situation is that in the previous season, Sophie had a previous relationship. It sounded like a friend with benefits kind of a thing, and now they're friends, and that she invited this friend along on the show, which seems a little shenanigansy, but whatever. And Sophie was not telling Rob that she had previously had sex with this guy. And it created a dust up between the two of them. And Rob is now clarifying that it doesn't have to do with her having had sex with a guy before or being friends with a guy that she had sex with currently. It has to do with her lying. I didn't hear this detail until now. Rob is saying that he saw a text saying, from her to this friend, do not tell him that we had sex. Okay, so can we understand Sophie's impulse there? Sure. We would understand that from Sophie's perspective, she's just like, look, it doesn't matter that I had sex with this guy before. We're just friends now. There's no threat there. There's no reason to tell my husband this detail. We all make those kind of calls about what to reveal and what not to. We like to think, well, you should always be honest. Well, I think and there's radical honesty, and there's some couples that want to live like that. But I'll just take my wife and my relationship that, there are things that we would never lie to each other about, but we're not going to volunteer. And I'm not going to ask about. I know that Stacy had a life before me and had sex with other people. And so, intellectually, I get that. But if I were to ask her to describe those incidents or tell me the pros and cons or compare me to other, those are things that are inside her mind that she could disclose. But I don't want to hear that kind of stuff because it'll freak me out. There's only so much I think that we can handle. Now, some people can't handle it, and some people are totally fine with it, more polyamorously oriented. Not all, but, certainly polyamorous people have their lines as well. But my point is that it could be argued that when Sophie decided for herself not to tell Rob about this, past hookup, that you could see the impulse. But if pressed, then you gotta come clean about it. And, to preempt any kind of hurt feelings or setting a precedent that you're just going to lie about this sort of thing, then you probably should tell him, right? Or don't bring the guy around or something. There's a lot of ways around this, right? So the safest route would be to tell Rob, by the way, before the guy is even in the mix about coming on the show, you just say, so I just want to tell you that I have this friend and his name is blah, blah, blah. And we're really good friends, but we hooked up a long time ago. But we haven't hooked up in a long time. It was very brief. We weren't, dating. We weren't in love. And it was just a, 1 or 2 time thing. And we're friends now. And I like this person as a friend, and, we're supportive of each other. He has a girlfriend or whatever it is, we've seen that kind of scenario. And I just wanted to get out ahead of that and, hear how you feel about that, right? I think Rob, given the way he's talking right now, maybe he would be a little worried. Maybe there's a couple questions there. Maybe there's a period of time where he's kind of watching out for signs that he's being screwed over or something. But, trust is built. And that's the other thing is, like, when you come clean about stuff like that, it sets a precedent like, oh, you're going to tell me things even when you don't have to that, could provoke upsetness for me. So not only can I trust you with telling me other things, but I can also trust that you're not telling me things, and you are saying that you trust me with telling me stuff like that. That there's a lot of trust, and it's destroyed when you lie and lie by omission. So that's what he is focusing on. He's saying, doesn't have anything to do with the fact that she hooked up with a friend a long time ago. It has to do with the fact that she is lying. So there's that. Now, the other thing I'll say is that sometimes jealous people will say this, but really why they're upset is because of their insecure attachment is being triggered by just the very notion that their partner has been with someone else, and they know better than to say that, and so they'll say, I'm really just upset at the lying. I say that's kind of rare, but I'll allow for that possibility because I don't know Rob very well.
What would you like her to say to you?
So as a part of my reaction, I feel compelled, and I'm wondering if people want me to comment on the therapy actions. And that's a great question to ask. It's concise, it's to the point, it focuses people. It's something that I do, not necessarily that exact question, but along those lines, because there's so many things you can say or do or not do as a therapist when people are talking about this sort of thing. And that's really the art form that's involved in being a good therapist. It's not about saying the right thing. It's knowing how to artfully create a conversation that helps people. And, how do you formalize that? How do you prescribe that? It's an art form. Socializing is an art form, and this is broadly speaking, a form of socializing. Anyway, so the question is helpful because so many people will be stuck in this sort of complaint cycle. I'm just and they never stop and think and convey to the other person, this is what I want. You've heard me talk about requests. So I might, given my lingo with my clients, I might say, okay, what's the request? That kind of thing. And that's what the therapist did, which is good.
When I was younger, no, you lying to me is now.
What would you like her to say to you?
Rob, I'm sorry.
An apology.
I just didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to tell you that because I didn't want it to be a big deal. It didn't mean anything. Like any type of actual remorse.
Okay.
Instead of just acting like she just did nothing wrong.
Wow. Yeah. The more I see from Rob, the more I'm impressed by him. I did not expect that kind of an answer and so quick. So often, even with healthy clients, all clients are, well, what I'll say is even with clients that have a lot of differentiation, either earned or just by the fact that they were raised without much trauma, even they will kind of hem and haw with that question, what's the request? and they'll say, well, I just want her to stop doing that thing or whatever, instead of immediately getting to the core of the matter, which is what Rob did. So that's impressive. But the particular thing that he said was so impactful to me. Let's rewind.
Say to you.
Rob, I'm sorry.
An apology.
I just didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to tell you that because I didn't want it to be a big deal. It didn't mean anything. Like any type of...
Yeah. You'll hear me role play similar kinds of approaches, right? Hey, Rob, I'm sorry that I lied by omission. Or even if someone isn't comfortable, a lot of people hate identifying that they've lied, and they'll say every other word. I learned that a long time ago, particularly with adolescent clients, that if I said, why did you lie to your parents? Even if I was being compassionate, they would hate that question. I didn't lie. Even I'm like, well, what word would you put to it when you said that you were home by curfew and you actually never came home till the next morning, that kind of. So, that's a bad example, but you know what I mean. So I might have words like, for her to maybe be able to say something like, hey, Rob, I'm sorry that I didn't tell you the full story, something like that. And the reason why is because I didn't want to make it a big thing, but that was a mistake, and I'm sorry, and I feel bad that I put you in a place where you feel like you can't trust me. Something like that. So he just role played that, and then he says, compassion. That's what I'm looking for. So many people are in his shoes wanting that, but they can't even admit that to themselves, because to admit that and to say it out loud is weak.
Actual remorse.
Okay.
Instead of just acting like she just did nothing wrong.
I need you to do some breathing and relaxing for a second, just to kind of get yourself to this calm state to get through this, and I'll go talk to her. But exactly what you're asking for, we'll talk about that, okay?
Okay. So the therapist says, I need you. I need you. I need you? I mean, I don't want to be semantic police, but I need you. But the message is fine, I think. I just don't know what the cast members have agreed to, because the way they make it look is there's been no conversation about consent. Now, of course, there's been some signing of some papers somewhere, but for my sake anyway, I would have liked it. It wouldn't take long, just like 10 seconds of little edited blips and burbs of them saying, so here's my approach, here's what I'm going to do, would you like to do that? And then Rob says, yeah, go for it, let me have it, because I'm here to do stuff. If it was something like that, then I'd be fine. But I don't know. So, So, but then I need you. But the message is fine, which is that's his approach, the CBT, emotional regulation. There's nothing wrong with emotional regulation. I would wonder if Rob understands what the therapist is saying, but what the therapist is trying to do is say, okay, I'm going to go to her, and then I'm going to have the two of you talk, and it'll help you if not, I need you to. But it'll probably help if you were to right now do some self-regulation exercises, because when we're cortisol amped up and adrenalized and fight or flight, we can't think straight. We end up, fight or flighting instead of listening and working things out. I'm going to say the same thing to her. This is a, very common, we would say that it's a cognitive / also behavioral approach to couple therapy. It's also a Gottman approach, which often is considered to be at least akin to CBT couples therapy. Anyway, so I want to rewind that, make sure I'm not misremembered.
Type of actual remorse.
Okay.
Instead of just acting like she just did nothing wrong.
I need you to do some breathing and relaxing for a second, just to kind of get yourself to this calm state to get through this, and I'll go talk to her.
Yeah, I'll just say, for myself, if I were a client and I heard a therapist say that, especially at this phase where I really have no idea who this guy is, they had a brief group intro the previous night, and all three of the professionals were up there having a pretty non-personal kind of conversation, and then they're doing this group exercise, and he's like, I need you to, that would instantly turn me off. Now, if I'm at a retreat, I'm like, well, I'm at the beginning, so I better just sort of let that go and let's get into this. Okay, so I'm gonna do. But if I heard that 3 or 4 more times from him, I'd be like, I need to? What do you mean I need to? Or I would just, probably more likely, I would avoid conflict and internally just turn away from him, that kind of thing. There's so many other ways to word it. Like the way that I was role playing earlier of like, it would really help in the two of you actually being able to see eye to eye if the two of you are self-regulating. Because, I really have hopes that you can bond over this issue and that she can apologize. But relaxation is a big part of that. So, something like that. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. And if you sign up, please use the link below because that really helps us out. So it's autumn, back to school. And it's also a time where the days grow darker, which can be tough for some people. But to me, this is also a time for coziness and meeting up with a friend for coffee or something and wearing your best fall jacket. And I don't know why, but the fall also seems like a time for therapy. But as the days grow darker, we might cocoon and avoid reaching out to a friend or to a therapist. But after we do those things, we often will say, why didn't I do this sooner? Well, BetterHelp is one avenue that you can use to reach out to a therapist. And for 12 years, BetterHelp has been fine-tuning their process of matching people with the right therapist. So this month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it easier to take that first step. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Kirk. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
Talk to him. I'm noticing the pattern here is Rob's getting really upset and worked up because he's not feeling understood. There's something that he needs to communicate. She then responds to how he's communicating in his tone and language, and she checks out. Can I talk with you? Yeah. You did your own.
So I don't blame the therapist for having extremely limited information by this point. For me, even though I haven't watched the previous seasons, I have seen a lot of behind the scenes and the build up and the one-on-one interviews. So I have a lot more information. I mean, that is one way to put it, but I would really, if Rob has even barely communicated what he communicated just now, anyone would understand, and he has actually, now that I think about it, anyone in Sophie's position would understand that it's the lies that's the problem. He has said that explicitly. So it's not hard to do some and it's been, I think, months since that happened. So it's not hard to just say, yeah, or even just halfway, just like, well, you get upset, but yeah, okay, fine, I mean, that wouldn't be great, but anyway, I'm not saying Sophie is like the problem, but the way that he worded it right there, it seemed like it was his fault. I don't know though, well, let's give him this is why systems thinking is so hard, that you truly take a step back from trying to be who was to blame, and more of, it doesn't matter who's to blame, or both are to blame, or whatever. Let's put that aside. It's caused by, and now that I think about it, I mean, that is the way he worded it, but anyway, let's see what happens.
People react in different ways, and some of them are this concept of fleeing because they get so worried or anxious or scared. And we're seeing Sophie is fleeing these.
Yeah, so I need to just stop looking for things like Chris. Yeah, that's a great perspective, that it's not, obvious that Sophie is scared and fleeing. She's not saying that explicitly. From the outside, it just looks like she either doesn't care or is being stubborn or something like that. So it's almost all the ways the case that kind of behavior underneath it is some sort of fear. And it shoots us in the foot, right? That we're afraid of rejection, and we're afraid of upsetting other people. And in the process, we actually make people upset and make them want to reject us.
I know Rob, he's going to literally be in a horrible mood with me this whole time. He doesn't let things go. I can let things go. He already was starting to be rude. He was like, I'm not one.
What I that's his history, right? His history makes him respond like that. And I think right now,
It's hard to know what the therapist is thinking versus what the therapist is saying to try to facilitate them coming together. I'll tell you, I'm gonna probably say this way too many times, and I'll try to avoid. I would just love it if they would show us him asking her a question, would you like me to help you with this? Because there's a chance that she doesn't. I don't know. Now, you could say, well, you're at a retreat. Then obviously you want help with this. Not necessarily. So I would ask that. And I would also ask that because if I'm about to get into some directive interventions where I suggest a pathway, and there's some pressure from me, sort of, even if I'm not putting active pressure, there's still pressure because I'm the therapist, the cameras are there. I would want there to be buy-in, meaning that I would want the client to have said to me, yes, I want your help. Please, give it your best shot. Just something along those lines. So also, not only just for ethics, and it all just goes back to my early career where most therapists are in agencies that have a lot of clients who don't want to be there and they're just being shoved into therapy or mandated by the courts or something. And those are some of the most miserable clients you could ever work with. They're not miserable people, but we are a punishment. People are like, oh, gotta go to therapy. Oh, yeah. And you're both stuck there involuntarily, and you have an hour to kill and to try to get, so I will be damned if in my later career I will ever have to deal with that shit again, and I've done everything I can to avoid that. So I am along those lines, but also if a client says to me, yes, I want your help, then I can say, okay, well, here's how I think it would help. So it puts the ball in their court. It's important that clients feel like I have my hands on the wheel. I'm not a passenger in this therapy. I'm the driver of therapy. The therapist is suggesting things. My hands are on the wheel. You don't want to put people in the position of helplessness, but also you want them to take control. Because when people are backseated, they tend to, cross their arms. Whereas if they rise, when you put their hands on the wheel, then they usually rise to the occasion, or there's a better chance anyway.
I'm sorry, this is a lot of information for both of us, and I'm sorry that you're hurt. And I'd like, if he's here with him, I want him to be able to say that to you right now. I think you both need that.
I would like to do this and continue with
Let's
what we're
walk
supposed to do.
Okay. I'm really trying, of the therapy that I remember watching from season 1 of Last Resort, this is, by far tremendously better. Past life regression therapy, leprechaun shit. I mean, it's a joke, really. I can't say that. It looked like a joke. Let's just put it that way. And it looked like, he was taking it as a joke. And anyway, so I'll say that. But as a couple therapist, as a couple therapist professor, it was one of the main courses I taught for 30 years. I can tell you that couple therapy is complicated. It's hard work. It's the hardest. And there are certain pitfalls. One of the pitfalls is rushing, really in therapy in general, but in couple therapy, it's particularly bad because you start to triangulate, you get triangulated, and you see the answer as the therapist of, well, if the two of you can just apologize to each other, everything will be fine. And that's true, right? And so as a therapist, you end up just saying, you just start trying to just make them do it. But that doesn't work, obviously, especially if you have defiant clients. But also it doesn't set them up for success. Also, it ignores all of the reasons that are preventing. I was hoping he would go over to her, having said what he had said earlier. And maybe he did. We're seeing an edited version. But from what we're being shown, he was earlier saying that she is retreating because she's afraid that, he's conceptualizing that. She hasn't said that, but that is a good conceptualization, very likely. I thought he was going to go to her and say, tell me when you're walking away or when you are not wanting to listen to him anymore, what's going on with you inside? Hoping that you would get to that fear so that she will know what's going on with her instead of what is at the conscious mind, which is Rob's an asshole. That's what she's thinking. I mean, not that those words, but essentially, right? And when you think that, then you feel justified in being stubborn and walking away. You can still feel justified in walking away if you're afraid, but at least you know why you're doing it. And so you can communicate that, take care of yourself, one, communicate it so that Rob can say, oh, I didn't know that I thought you were walking away because you didn't give a shit about my feelings, but you're walking away because you're afraid. Oh no, anyway. So I thought he was going to do that, but let's rewind this and watch what he actually did.
That's his history, right? His history makes him respond like that. And I think right now we diffuse this with, I'm sorry, this is a lot of information for both of us, and I'm sorry that you're hurt. And I'd like, if he's here with him, I want him to be able to say that to you right now.
So he's telling her exactly what to say, or generally speaking, right? And even that, I'm sorry that you're hurt. If I were Rob, I'd be like, fuck you. You're sorry that I wouldn't say that. I'm not that kind of guy, but I'd be thinking it, It's condescending. I'm sorry that you're hurt. You're sorry that I'm hurt. You're the one who hurt me by lying. So now we're back to this, so no. Two, she isn't saying I want to apologize. He's telling her this is what you, and I didn't show it or I didn't highlight it, but after he walked away from Rob kind of quietly to himself sort of rolled his eyes a little bit. And I don't know what that, it could be that he's rolling his eyes about like, this is hopeless, my wife, Sophie is, whatever. Or he could have been rolling his eyes and just like, what is this guy telling me? I need you. So, I don't know. Like I said, compared to other therapy I've seen on the show, this is pretty good, but it is rushed. I'll just say it's rushed. It's rushed. You got to take your time. The other thing I'll say for sure, and this is why I would never agree to be a therapist on a show like this, even though some of y'all in the comment section would be like, oh, you should. One, no. Two, I would be so nervous I would fuck everything up. Three, I know that I would either be pressured or I would just make pressure up in my mind that I have to prove myself or I have to please the producers by going quickly, by having outcomes right away. One of the nicest things about eventually being in private practice myself was that no one was breathing down my neck and I could go at the pace of the client. Now, arguably that was always true, but when you have bosses, you just, I don't know, sometimes you just make up this mandate in your mind. So there's tremendous pressure. There's potential pressure from the producers, at least implied, that, okay, we really want you to work out what's going on. We really want you to have them have a conversation because, they're really at this impasse. And we want you, and as an employee of 90 Day Fiancé, you're just like, oh, okay, how do I earn my keep? How do I avoid getting a bad edit, by pleasing the producer, whatever is going through your mind. So it's very rushed. It might work though. What I'm saying, everything that I'm saying, it says nothing about what is going to help. It's just what I believe from watching a reality TV show is more likely to help. Which honestly, what I'm recommending would, the time amount, there's rushed and then there's what therapy I would recommend. That therapy would be so long-winded and long time spanning that they wouldn't be able to capture on camera. And, if I were it's a 3-week thing, even though it's an intensive, I would imagine that even if I had this couple for an hour every day, we would only get somewhat down the road and it wouldn't be very interesting to look at. So it wouldn't make for very good reality TV.
No, I think you both need that.
I would like to do this and continue with
Let's
what we're
walk
supposed to do.
And then that. She responds, let's rewind, and then he's like, let's walk back. Now, maybe this is all going over well with her, but it risks alienating the client. It risks making the client feel like, oh, I'm just being carted around and it has nothing to do with what I want or what our relationship needs. I'm in a Simon Says kind of a game, but let's rewind that.
And I'd like, if he's here with him, I want him to be able to say that to you right now. I think you both need that.
I would like to do this and continue with
Let's
what we're
walk
supposed to do.
And I don't know, but I would want to ask him, are you frustrated right now with this couple? Are you frustrated with her? Because it came across that way. You know, she's like resisting by not agreeing with him prescribing to her to apologize, or kind of a non-apology. And she's like, I just want to do this exercise that he prescribed. There's this exercise that they're supposed to do. And then he goes, let's walk back. And like, how is that going to help, you know? Now, I don't know, you know, I could be reading it wrong. Obviously, as a therapist, I guess I have some kind of bias about other therapists' way of being a therapist. I'm also very particular about the way I like therapy to look. So, you know, there's all that.
That to you right now. I think you both need that.
I would like to do this and continue with
Let's
what we're
walk
supposed to do.
I understand that I was wrong to not be honest with Rob about the extent of me and Callum's relationship, but at the same time, the way he's acting now is exactly why I didn't want to tell him. But I have come here to work on myself and try and be better.
So I'll allow for the possibility that I am not on the receiving end of Rob's vibe or attitude. We're also not there all the time. Maybe Rob is being unreasonably persistent about it. But if all it takes, you know, according to his claim, and maybe that's not true, is for her to say, I'm sorry that I lied to you about Callum, and I'm sorry that I asked Callum to lie to you. I'm sorry that, you know, I have my reasons. I'm not, this isn't the tip of the iceberg. I'm not a liar in general. I'm also not cheating on you, that, you know, so I could see how it would look like that. And that's kind of why I wanted to lie about it in the first place. But I realized, you know, anyway, this is getting a little weird, really. But if all it took for her to say, yeah, I absolutely understand why this would hurt you and anger you because I lied to you. And I'm sorry about that. I have my reasons, I guess, but looking back, it was the wrong call, and I'm sorry. That's all it takes. And if he were able to move on for the most part after that point, then why would you not say that if you believe it in this interview? Now, if these interviews happen, I think, after they shoot. I think it happens sometimes months later. So her attitude now in this one-on-one interview is, I understand why he's upset, but the way he's approaching me, she's basically saying, because he's upset, I'm being stubborn. Because I upset him. I understand why, she's saying, I understand I upset him, and I get that. And he's being upset, and therefore I'm not going to apologize because he's upset. All right, let's adjourn there. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.